Since this course is called Camera and Image, it obviously makes sense for us to start out with the camera. This is a normal, run-of-the-mill, 35 millimeter single lens reflex digital camera. This one is a Nikon body with guts by Fuji. Nikon and Canon are probably the leading camera manufacturers, although there are a number of companies. Before I talk about this camera, I want to get a little bit more basic and start with one of the most basic cameras there is, a pinhole. A camera is basically nothing more than a light-tight box with a way that we can let light in to a light-sensitive material. In a pinhole, you have that tiny little hole in a sheet of metal. You load a sheet of black and white photo paper into the camera in the darkroom. Our shutter is the simplest thing in the world. It's a piece of black tape. So in the darkroom, we load in the paper, we put our shutter on, we take the camera outside. It needs a lot of light. When we're ready to go, we open the shutter and close the shutter. The real exposure would probably be something like 5 minutes. Then we go back into the darkroom and process our picture. Our present day cameras are a little bit more complicated and quite a bit more expensive, but they basically do the same thing. We have a lens that gathers and focuses the light onto a light-sensitive material inside. Present day cameras, obviously, that's a digital capture device of one kind or another. We have ways of controlling how much light we let in. First one I'm going to talk about is the shutter. We can have the shutter open for a short period of time or a long period of time. Cameras see things differently than human beings do. There you can actually see the CCD inside there a little bit. The shutter, if it's open for a long time, things in our scene blur. If it's open for a short period of time, everything stays sharp. The other control we have is in our lens, and it's our aperture, or what we call f-stop. This lens goes from a maximum wide-open aperture of 1.8 down to a minimum aperture of f22. So we start out f1.8, 2, 2.8, 4, 5.6, 8, 11, 16, 22. So what, you say? Well, the aperture is what allows us to control how much is in focus, what we call the depth of field. With our lens, we can focus in and out, closer to or further away from the camera. But as we change the aperture, we change how much is in focus. A wide open aperture gives us a short depth of field. As we close the aperture down, the depth of field gets bigger. I'll have some photos that display that pretty well. And all these things are mentioned in the reading and in some of the websites I've mentioned. And I urge you to look at some of those resources, and you'll get all this information in several different formats, which is the best way to learn it. This is an important concept, the fact that we have both shutter speeds and apertures.